On to breaking news now as NASA officials giving an update on the Artemis II mission at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Let's listen in.
Far side of the moon. Now, these images will be publicly available on NASA's website, our digital platforms, and the White House actually released the now iconic EarthSat photo from earlier today. Now, these are the first of many incredible images of the moon, and we'll continue to release them as they become available. My understanding from just a few minutes ago is that they captured over 175 gigabytes of imagery from the lunar pass alone just yesterday. And the images that you are seeing right now have been transmitted back to Earth predominantly through optical communication, which is pretty cool stuff. Now, before I turn the call over to Dr. Lori Glaze, I wanted to share some of the other things that we are doing at NASA while the Artemis II crew are underway on this historic mission. So the crew on the International Space Station are hard at work. They're undertaking the science and tech demos, many of which have directly supported the Artemis program missions and will continue to do so. The Exploration Ground System personnel, if you want a quick Kennedy Space Center update here, have been out at the launch pad. The crawler, my understanding, is approaching the outer gate, and we expect ML1 to be back in the vehicle assembly building within approximately a week. Now, this would cut down on the turnaround time that we observed from Artemis I, measured in months right now, several months. On the science front, my understanding is the Blue Origin Mark I lunar lander is wrapping up here at the Johnson Space Center in Chamber A. Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope testing is progressing, so much so that we feel reasonably confident we're going to announce a target launch date this year sometime in the next 2 weeks. In aeronautics, we've been flying the X-59 almost daily while the Artemis II mission has been underway. So we work to rebuild our X-plane portfolio. The first senior-level Artemis III mission design discussion today. Teams are working with vendors on moon-based RFIs and RFPs, and we are advancing the Skyfall scientific payload for the first interplanetary nuclear-powered spacecraft, SR-1 Freedom. I think the most important point we're trying to make here is we can launch history-making missions like Artemis II, start making meaningful progress towards Artemis III, and do all the other important programs the world's been waiting for from NASA. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Glaze.
Thank you, Jared. I just have to say, wow, when I look at all of those images that we're scrolling by. I hope all of you are as inspired as I am. I know as they continue to be downloaded, they're just absolutely stunning, and we really hope that they are inspiring truly everyone in the world. As the crew surpassed their record for the farthest distance, as Jared just mentioned, when they traveled on the far side of the moon, they offered some compelling words, and I love this. They said they challenged this generation and the next to make sure that this record is not long-lived, and I love that because we have big plans to go not just back to the moon on a regular basis, but beyond. And then, of course, while it's been really exciting here the last couple of days, as we've been watching all of the activity in Orion, we still have to ensure that Reed, Victor, Christina, and Jeremy return home safely on Friday evening. So we're pretty focused on that now, making sure that they get home safely. I will just say a couple of things about yesterday's operations. Really provided a great opportunity to test how our flight operations teams and our science teams are working together in real time with the crews at the moon. And in fact, from my perspective, one of my favorite things about watching all of the amazing data that was flowing down yesterday is thinking about how so much of NASA is working together in order to enable all of what you're seeing. All right, better stop exercising. But as I was saying, what's really great to see everybody working together. So I think about our exploration programs that are supporting our transportation systems like Orion, working with our flight operations and our flight directors, all of the ground teams that are supporting, including the science team supported by the Science Mission Directorate, thinking about our crew that are actually performing the work, and then the payloads that have been provided that they're using. So everything that you're looking at isn't just, it's not just the pretty pictures, it's a huge chunk of NASA working together to enable that. All of this information that we're gathering is really going to help refine how we plan our future missions to the lunar surface. I'll just say that our flight operations team continues to fly Orion and put it through its paces as the crew and the spacecraft make their way home. And the mission isn't over yet. We do continue to learn from how our spacecraft and our crew are operating together in space. We continue with several of the science activities that are focused on the crew health and life in space. So still a lot of things going on. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Rick so he can share some of the operational details.
Thank you, Lori. The administrator touched on a few of the operations that the crew's been up to recently, but I'll fill in a few of the other details of interest. Since we last met Sunday evening, the crew performed the first orbital trajectory correction maneuver, outbound trajectory correction maneuver number 3. It was 10.4 feet per second. The burn duration was 19 seconds, and we used our auxiliary thrusters on the service module. Obviously, yesterday was the big day with flyby, and I'll save all those details for Kelsey, but we had some really poignant remarks from the crew, and I can assure you there wasn't a dry eye in mission control when the naming of the 2 craters was announced by Jeremy. As part of the lunar flyby, the crew made their pass closest to the moon, flying at 3,138 miles per hour relative to the surface of the moon. And now they're on their way making their march back home to Earth. We bid a temporary goodbye to the moon earlier today at 1:23 p.m. Eastern Time. That's the milestone where we exited the lunar sphere of influence and we're back under the control of Earth's gravity. As for today's operations, we had a couple of public affairs events. The crew is going to have, each of them will have a conference with their family members. We'll have some routine medical checks. And then in the evening, we're going to perform the first return trajectory correction maneuver. It will be 1.3 feet per second. It'll last about 15 seconds, and we're going to use the service module reaction control system thrusters to do that burn. We expect that burn to occur about 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Finally, I'll conclude my remarks with acknowledging that the USS John P. Murtha has left port and has started steaming out to the midway point for the recovery of Integrity and her crew later on Friday. That's all for today's operations update, so I'll hand it over to Kelsey.
Thanks. Spirits are very high. We did what we set out to do. The lunar science team and the crew prepared extensively, as we talked about a couple days ago, for flyby, and I hope you all saw that yesterday during execution. We confirmed, as Lori mentioned, that we can, achieve science through orbital observations and through integrating science into flight operations. And as Rick just said, we left temporarily, and we're looking forward to integrating all these lessons learned in future missions. I can't conclude opening remarks without diving into science detail, so forgive me just a couple deep dives. Impact flashes, over a 30-minute observation period, and this was largely during that time of the eclipse, crew observed several impact flashes. We did have citizen scientists here on Earth also looking for flashes, and I know that the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter team is hard at work trying to identify evidence of those impact flashes that the crew observed. I did have a chance to have the post-flyby crew conference with the crew this morning, and we asked a lot of follow-ups on those impact flashes. Impact flashes are caused by micrometeorite impacts hitting the moon, and they really help tell us about the dynamic lunar environment, which is of course also important when we think about future missions. I don't know if I expected to have the crew see any on this mission, so you probably saw the surprise and shock on my face. And though I was not in the science evaluation room, I heard that there were audible screams of delight. So, very excited science community. You've heard me talk a lot about the importance that human explorers bring to scientific exploration, especially around observations of color. And so I'm sure all of you, like I was eagerly awaiting if they saw any other colors other than black, white, and shades of gray. You heard that they did indeed. Right away, they started describing the green around Aristarchus Plateau and different brown hues. And these colors really help tell us nuances about the chemistry of lunar material, especially the greens around Aristarchus. That was exciting. That's something that we can all see from here on Earth. And so I encourage you all to go out and look at the moon tonight and look for Aristarchus.
You've been listening to NASA officials giving giving an update on the historic moon flyby. All systems go, and such a great synopsis of what's happening.